This is VOA Africa.
Good evening, I'm Esther Gidhu-Ewart. It's Friday, December 13th. This is Africa 54. Former Algerian Prime Minister Abdelmadjid Tebboune is elected president in a vote mired by protests. Rwanda co-hosts Anti-Corruption Excellence Award Summit. And in our entertainment segment, award-winning rapper and entrepreneur Sarkodie. Former Algerian Prime Minister Abdelmadjid Tebboune is the new president of Algeria. He was announced as the winner on Friday, defeating 4 other officially sanctioned candidates in Thursday's election. Algerian authorities are hoping the poll will end months of turmoil and protests. Demonstrators who toppled Tebboune's predecessor, Abdelaziz Bouteflika, after 20 years in power, vowed that their movement will not stop. Tebboune, 74, served as housing minister under Bouteflika and briefly as premier before parting ways with tycoons in the former leader's entourage. Election officials say only 40% of eligible voters, or 9 million people, participated in the ballot. But state media cast the election turnout high enough to vindicate the decision to hold the poll. Thousands of demonstrators are expected back into the streets of Algiers to protest against the result. Rwanda this week co-hosted the annual Anti-Corruption Excellence Award Summit to celebrate and encourage successes against graft, including at home. Transparency International ranks Rwanda as the 4th least corrupt country in Africa, behind the Seychelles, Botswana, and Cape Verde. Njin Ouimana reports from Kigali.
Rwanda and Qatar co-hosted this year's Anti-Corruption Excellence Award Summit in Kigali, known as the AC Awards, to recognize and support efforts to reject graft. The Economic Commission for Africa, ECA, and the African Union Commission, AUC, estimate illicit financial flows in Africa average an annual $50 billion to $148 billion. Transparency International ranks Rwanda the 4th least corrupt country in Africa, however, and the 2nd least corrupt on the mainland after Botswana.
Compared to maybe other countries, African countries, I can say that Rwanda at least tried to do its best, even if we have still a long way before us.
Putting government services on the line is one measure Rwanda has taken to prevent corruption. While higher-level corruption is no longer rampant, Rwandans say you can still run into local corruption.
In many cases, you find that for a local leader to help you at a local sector level, he sometimes tells you, "Buy me a beer." It is not done like this, without respecting the law.
Nigeria is routinely ranked one of the more corrupt nations in Africa. At Nigeria hosted the African Union Summit on Corruption in June, Rwanda's President Paul Kagame said facing down graft was a choice.
This is a campaign that can be won. Tolerating corruption is a choice, not an inevitability.
Aside from the Anti-Corruption Summit, Qatar also sponsored a monument in Rwanda that represents public solidarity in the ongoing fight against graft. Njin Ouimana for VOA News, Kigali.
In East Africa, Kenya on Thursday marked the anniversary of the end of British colonial rule and more than 5 decades of independence. But for 2 communities in the Great Rift Valley, there's not much to celebrate. The Kipsigis and Talai communities accuse the British of collective punishment by forcefully evicting them from their land, which was turned into profitable tea farms. Now they want the United Nations to investigate that colonial-era land grab. Mohammed Yusuf reports from Kericho.
Kenya's Great Rift Valley town of Kericho is famous for tea farms, most of them owned by rich families and global firms. However, locals like 95-year-old Kibore Cheruiyot Ngasura says they still remember the day in 1934 when Kenya's colonial rulers forced them out of their homes and took their land.
The day of eviction, armed men working for the British administration came and pushed us out of our homes by force. Women whose husbands were jailed were then raped. They beat everybody.
Lawyers for over 100,000 Kenyans in September asked the United Nations to investigate. They are demanding compensation for Kenyans forcibly removed from ancestral lands.
Our argument is they started a form of apartheid in Kericho, and our argument is that the world needs to know of all these things. Our argument is, much as we are very concerned, very bitter, and very much and very strongly coming out as people who were oppressed, we are also saying that we are reasonable enough, and they should be reasonable.
The British Foreign Office has said it will respond accordingly to any UN investigation. Kenya's Land Commission in February ruled, despite colonial laws to the contrary, that the British unlawfully seized the land. Tea companies are challenging the ruling in court, though to prevent a takeover by the county government.
These people don't want to chase away investors. This is something I need to make very clear. But they know that these investors are doing honest business, but in stolen land. And they want to discuss how they can be remedied so that they can live harmoniously with the investors.
Meanwhile, aging claimants like Ngasura only hope to live long enough for justice, or at least, he says, to hear the British apologize. Mohamed Yusuf for VOA News, Kericho, Kenya.
Time magazine's selection of Swedish climate activist Greta Thunberg as its Person of the Year underscores the growing clout of youth power pushing governments to escalate the fight against what many consider a climate crisis. That is also happening in Africa, which is especially vulnerable to climate change. Lisa Bryant reports on 3 young Africans who are making a difference.
Lara Moaves works with local communities in Mozambique to ensure sustainable fishing practices, helping them to adapt to a changing climate.
I have a great passion for environment issue, mainly marine.
Mozambique is on the front lines of climate change, which is intensifying weather events. Cyclones in March and April left a trail of destruction. Hundreds of people died, many from disease after the cyclones. Among them, Lara's best friend and collaborator in the fisheries project.
Chris died from malaria. He was there in Ibu. That time he died, 4 people per week, 4 to 8 people were dying, you know, like animals and people. Chris could not escape from the situation.
Several thousand kilometers north in Nigeria, Mahmoud Maishanu is looking for what he calls climate-smart solutions for sectors like agriculture, the backbone of Africa's economy.
In my own hometown, not far from where my grandparents are, there's a whole lot of drought and desertification.
He says many Nigerians aren't fully aware of the impact of climate change. Young people are changing that.
I'm seeing a more determining generation. I'm seeing a more determining youth taking action, doing what the previous generation hasn't done for its future generation.
One of those youths is French-Moroccan climate activist Ayoub Makloufi. He's created a green-friendly torch, sort of like the Olympic one. Today, it travels to each yearly climate meeting.
This year, we traveled from Katowice in Poland to Belém in Brazil by electric car, train and sailboat.
Makloufi wants to help find financing for African environmental projects and build climate awareness in schools. He sees the challenges in his parents' native Morocco.
Lack of water, lack of education, especially in terms of sustainable development.
But he remains optimistic the world will find solutions to climate change. The challenge is finding the right ones so everyone can benefit. Lisa Bryant for VOA News, Madrid.
In other world news, Britain is now appearing certain to leave the European Union by the end of January after British Prime Minister Boris Johnson secured a big majority of 78 seats in Thursday's general election. His Conservative Party seized control of dozens of constituencies that had voted to leave in the 2016 referendum, vindicating Johnson's decision to call an election. However, Henry Ridgewell reports from London.
The Conservative Party candidate, 17,000.
The first shockwaves were felt in the working-class valleys of northern England. Blythe Valley is a former coal mining community, a seat held by the opposition Labour Party since its creation in 1950. On Thursday night, it turned blue for the first time. One by one, supposedly safe Labour seats fell to the Conservatives. Boris Johnson's mantra of "Get Brexit Done" broke through. His election gamble paid off.
We will get Brexit done on time by the 31st of January. No ifs, no buts, no maybes. Leaving the European Union as one United Kingdom, taking back control of our laws, borders, money, our trade, immigration system, delivering on the democratic mandate of the people.
After 3.5 years of battles, it's clear Brexit is happening.
In the short term, it brings certainty because they've now clearly got the numbers in Parliament to pass the withdrawal agreement bill and also, importantly, to see off any hostile amendments from the opposition.
Brussels welcomed the clarity that Johnson's victory may bring.
We are ready. The European Union will negotiate in order to have a close cooperation in the future with the UK.
For Labour, the results were a disaster. Leader Jeremy Corbyn said he would not lead the party into the next election. The pro-EU vote was split between opposition parties. Liberal Democrat leader Jo Swinson lost her seat. But Conservative celebrations could be short-lived. Britain could face another cliff edge in just 12 months' time.
There's the option to extend that transition period in July, but so far the Conservatives have said that they're not going to take that, which puts them on quite a kind of breakneck timetable to get the future relationship with the EU wrapped up by December.
US President Donald Trump welcomed Johnson's victory, writing on Twitter that a trade deal with Britain could be more lucrative than any deal with the EU. Most trade experts disagree. The election could lead to the breakup of Britain. The Scottish National Party won 49 out of 59 seats in Scotland. Leader Nicola Sturgeon said that constitutes a big mandate for another referendum on Scottish independence. And for the first time, Northern Ireland elected more nationalist than unionist MPs, so the once distant prospect of a united Ireland appears closer. This was a thumping Conservative victory, but one confined mainly to England. Boris Johnson seems certain to deliver Brexit. He may also be the last Prime Minister of a united kingdom. Henry Ridgewell for VOA News, London.
We're excited to hear what you think about Africa 54. Join the discussion on Facebook. The address is Africa54. We're also streaming our broadcast live on Facebook. Please watch and share our show with your friends. Also check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Still to come. In our entertainment report, we'll take a closer look at rapper and entrepreneur Sarkodie. You're watching Africa 54, live from Washington, D.C. We'll be right back.
chibwana chimalanda, chibwana chimalanda, ukakhala pabwino poyipa pamayitana. Chibwana chimalanda, ukakhala pantchito ulova umakodola. Chibwana chimalanda, ukakhala pabanja umbeta umayitana.
I'm Clara Frank, and here's what's trending. Building a new life can be difficult for refugees trying to settle in foreign countries. In Australia, a program for migrants in Canberra is helping new arrivals gain a sense of community by training them to run marathons. The Refugee Marathon Project was set up a year ago by Canberra resident Cassie Cohen, who was looking for a good environment for refugees and new migrants to make friends. The program pairs refugees with mentors who provide nutrition tips, coaching, and motivation. Most of last year's participants were men from Afghanistan. Next up, the centuries-old tradition of making Venetian glass is undergoing a revival. It's thanks in part to the success of a new school that opened in Murano, Italy in 2016, which accepts both young men and women as students to learn the ancient skill of glassmaking. Glassmaking on Murano goes back to the 8th century, reaching its peak in popularity during the 15th and 16th centuries under the Venetian Republic. It was confined to the island of Murano to prevent the spread of fire in case the furnaces blazed out of control, so as not to destroy the city of Venice. Limiting the craft to the island also helped the glassmakers protect the secrets of their trade. And finally, sustainability has woven its way into the mainstream cultural agenda, and fashion retailers, large and small, are racing to provide their green credentials and combat the climate crisis. At the higher end of the market, designers are keen to make sustainable fashion synonymous with luxury. In 2015, a sustainability report published by Nielsen found that 66% of consumers are willing to pay more for environmentally friendly clothing. Meanwhile, Burberry, Gucci, and Versace are among the higher-end houses now opting for faux fur, and many others will no longer use exotic animal skins. And that's what's trending today.
Here in the U.S., the United States House Judiciary Committee approved 2 articles of impeachment against President Donald Trump on Friday, paving the way for a vote in the full House that could come as early as next week. It is now highly likely that Trump will become the 3rd American president in history to be impeached. The committee members clashed all day and into the night Thursday as Republicans insisted on lengthy debate on amendments designed to kill the 2 former charges with no hope of winning votes from the majority Democrats.
Abuse of power, or quid pro quo, bribery. Call it whatever your focus group wants to call it. Because at the end of the day, you don't have the facts to make out the case.
President Trump is before this committee in articles of impeachment for his own behavior, for his desire to do with public monies and a public position to do a private matter and a political matter, and that is to get dirt on his 2020 potential opponent.
Trump is accused in the first article of abusing his presidential power by asking Ukraine to investigate his 2020 rival Joe Biden while holding military aid as leverage, and in the second of obstructing Congress by blocking the House's efforts to probe his actions. Trump, who insists he did nothing wrong, claims to be looking ahead to a swift acquittal in a Senate trial which is expected next month. If, as expected, the impeachment case moves to the Republican-controlled Senate for trial early next year, the political landscape is much more favorable to President Trump. VOA national correspondent Jim Malone previews what a Senate trial would likely look like.
come to order.
In the Senate, a call for divine guidance from Chaplain Barry Black.
Lord, guide our senators to the right paths. Lead them beside still waters. Restore their souls.
The Senate has been down this road before. In 1999, President Bill Clinton was acquitted of perjury and obstruction of justice related to his affair with intern Monica Lewinsky. In 1868, President Andrew Johnson survived a Senate trial by a single vote after he was impeached for violating a congressional act protecting high government officials from removal.
There was absolutely nothing done wrong.
In the case of President Trump, House Democrats have accused him of abuse of power and obstruction of Congress by allegedly pressuring Ukraine to investigate a political rival, Democrat Joe Biden. Congressman Jerry Nadler chairs the House Judiciary Committee.
Our president holds the ultimate public trust. When he betrays that trust and puts himself before a country, he endangers the Constitution, he endangers our democracy, and he endangers our national security.
Trump has denied the allegations and is counting on Senate Republicans to vote to acquit him in an impeachment trial.
The radical left Democrats and the failed Washington establishment are trying to erase your votes, nullify the election, and overthrow our democracy. Not going to happen. Don't worry about it. I wouldn't lose too much sleep over it.
Congressional Republicans have remained loyal to Trump, with only a few senators voicing criticism so far, says Julie Pace.
It doesn't mean that they will vote to convict him, but it does mean that we may see a scenario in which you have at least some members of Trump's party expressing real concern about his interactions with Ukraine.
To remove the president from office, 2/3 of the Senate, 67 out of the 100 senators, would have to vote to convict Trump on one or more articles of impeachment. That's very unlikely, says Larry Sabato.
I don't see how in the world you could ever get 20 Republican senators to vote to oust Donald Trump. They might as well vote to oust and then announce their resignations, because they won't be serving for very long once they cast that vote.
No matter the outcome, a Senate impeachment trial will be a demanding test for U.S. democracy, says Democrat Mark Warner.
And I would hope and pray that all of my Senate colleagues will take a deep breath, no matter kind of where we've been so far, and step back and realize this is probably the most important constitutional responsibility we have.
Even if Trump survives a Senate trial, his actions on Ukraine will likely be a top issue in the 2020 presidential campaign. Jim Malone, VOA News, Washington.
It's time for our entertainment segment, and joining us now is VOA Music Time in Africa host Heather Maxwell with another exciting music report. Heather, welcome.
Thank you, Esther. Hello, everyone. Michael Owusu-Addo, more popularly known by his stage name Sarkodie, is an incredibly successful Ghanaian rapper and entrepreneur. At age 34, he's racked up an impressive collection of awards, including 2 BET Awards for Best International Act, the most recent in 2019, an MTV Award for Best Hip Hop, and multiple African awards for Best Reggae, Dancehall, Artist of the Year, Best Song, and Best Male Artist of the Year. Well, I caught up with him earlier this month at the All Africa Music Conference in Accra, where he performed and participated on a panel about music business. Let's watch.
All right, hello again. We cut out there for a second, but you know, this is the first time ever Heather Maxwell, Music Time in Africa, has been live. Right. And we've got Sarkodie.
We got Sarkodie in the house. Everybody put it out. Come on, say. Straight out from, you know what I'm saying? Respect, Sarkodie. Respect.
Thank you.
Respect.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I love this. The setup is really nice.
What's new in your life?
So I'm dropping a new project called Black Love, which is my focus for now. So far, I've dropped like, I think 5 singles off it. I might be wrong. I'm really bad with that. I can't even keep up with my own stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what I'm working towards now, to be able to get the new project out. Black
Okay.
Love, yeah.
So, if you don't mind, I want to play like one of your older songs, but I just love it too much.
Oh yeah?
Can you guess
Let me
which
hear
one?
that. Adonai?
Yeah. Is it old, so old,
Yes,
but it's a
very
goodie.
old, yes.
All right, so let's listen to it. Let's listen to it a bit, and we'll come back to you.
Yeah. Memma woni pe bi ambu abonfia ahopo pro mo yanyina bu huntia oye wotam fo ja no manimvia yambu amu amunsi na bumpia
se wo pe mo anyo menyina ebi na na nyame ni awaka no ne bebe mo se wo ma usa swabi ponyina tutu so my party don't lose God can't walk for my door yeah. Everybody singing hallelujah.
What is Adonai? Anyway.
Yeah, so Adonai, I think, sounds, that's like the Almighty. That's how we call, that's God, you know, the only one, the most powerful.
Right, so let me ask you, I mean, you've been a star for so long, but what was it like before you were a star? And, you know, what happened, and how can you see that in young people today? Like, you know, but just tell me how it was for you.
I know it's not possible to be able to do music and want to stay not famous, but that is my dream. I wish that could happen and not be famous, because I'm very basic. I like to be me. I want to just walk and do whatever I want to do.
Yeah.
But fame came in and took all that away.
Really?
Not all, but almost everything.
Yeah, so you wish it...
As much as you want to do regular stuff, you know, it turns out not too well.
Yeah.
So I think there's two sides to it. I was really enjoying life, but maybe there's no money.
Right.
And there came fame. I'm not necessarily enjoying how I want to enjoy life, but there's a little bit of peace of mind that you can provide for your family.
So which is better?
It's really hard.
Wow.
Yes, because I'm very basic. You know, we all love money, but what makes me more happy is just having my family, being able to just go to the beach with my daughter, with nobody wanting to do anything, you know.
But do you have enough money to buy a private beach? Is that what people do?
But I don't want that.
Right, because then you're alone,
Exactly,
you're isolated.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I want to, because recently I took a video of, I was driving by the beach and there's a lot of people. I could see how fun that would be, like sitting there, like a picnic, a lot of people, you've seen people, and nobody cares about you. You know, I wish that sometimes that's what you want, you know. But
yeah, you know, that's interesting then. For all of those young artists that are like, man, I just want to be famous.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes you gotta, you know, be careful what you wish for.
Exactly.
Go.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and best of luck to all of you. We'll be glued to news about your new album.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And that's our show for today, Heather. Thank you very much. Watch us online. Good night from Washington. Heather.